10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 210. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 210 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope you're all doing well out there, and thank you for joining us once again. So before we jump into part 3 of our series on jazz articulation, I just wanted to thank some people that signed up for our Patreon site this week. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a place where you can support the podcast with a $3 donation each and every month, and that really keeps the show going, and you also get PDFs to every single episode that we've ever done with that membership. Instant access. So thank you to Walter, Greg, Angela, and Doug for joining up this week, and everybody that has over the past couple of months, and everybody that has over the past couple of years, to tell you the truth. You guys are really keeping the show going, and I really appreciate it. So to sign up for that, go to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today, instant access to everything that we have done so far. All right, let's jump into part 3 of our series on jazz articulation. This week, we are going to talk about accents. I know we've talked a little bit about note length, and obviously that does involve some different accents. But this week, we're going to talk about that remaining ingredient that's going to get you sounding really good and swinging, and that is where to accent on eighth note lines. So we want to remember that this is just a general guide. Like most of the things that we do here on the show, you want to take these concepts and you want to kind of adapt them for your own purposes. This is just meant to start you down a path. Certainly there's a lot of discovery to happen, after you get done with these concepts, but it's a great place to start. So we are going to talk about accenting the upbeat. This is a really important concept when it comes to playing swing music, and it really helps when you have long, extended eighth note lines, which we've been talking about on the first 2 episodes of this series. Now we're going to start talking about where to place an accent. Now we talked about putting a marcato at the end of a line of eighth notes. Now we're going to talk about adding a few more accents, and they're going to happen exclusively on the upbeats. So if you look at your PDF for this week, what I've done is I've come up with this about 8-measure phrase using just a 1-6-2-5, and I've written some typical bebop sounding eighth note lines, eighth note phrases. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by really heavily accenting the offbeat of every single phrase that I've written for you. And then we're going to slowly sort of increase the tempo and talk about what happens when you get that tempo up and maybe easing up on those accents, because it's much harder to accent at fast tempos. So first, let me start by playing very, very slowly through this phrase, and I really am going to almost overdo the accents on the upbeats and show you that it actually doesn't sound that bad even when I am really going for it. I'm going to be articulating kind of heavily on each one of these offbeats. It still kind of works. It still swings. So this is a great place to start. So you can hear I'm really going overboard with those offbeats. It's actually kind of hard for me to play like that because I'm just leaning on those a little bit harder than I normally would, but it still works. Hopefully you can hear that. It still swings. So this just goes to show you that the offbeat accent is absolutely essential when it comes to playing swing music. Now you will also notice, even though I was really heavily accenting those offbeats, I still stuck to all the principles that we talked about in the first episode of this series. So all of my eighth notes, except for the last eighth note in the line, were legato. They were very connected. Even though I was accenting, I did not break that. I did not start separating those notes. That would have caused it to not swing. It really, really would have stopped swinging if I did that. So make sure that you're still taking into account all of the other things that we talked about, even while you're working on this new thing. And if you can't do it, it might not be time for this yet. You might still need to study those other concepts that we talked about. I am also never tonguing so hard that it sounds jarring to your ears. I'm still trying to blend my articulation with everything around it, even when I'm doing those heavy accents. So those are a few things to think about, even when you're going really slow and you're trying to overdo it, which I do suggest doing. Really try to make it very obvious when you're practicing this at a slow tempo. So now let's bring this up to a little bit more of a medium tempo. I'm still going to try to emphasize those offbeats, but you're going to notice that the effect is going to decrease a little bit because first of all, I'm doing more in a shorter period of time. I'm playing more notes. So I'm not going to be able to get that same level of push on each one of those offbeat notes. And this will start to sound a little bit more like, what you hear your favorite bebop musicians doing when they're actually playing. It smooths it out a little bit, but pay really close attention because the accent pattern is still there. It's just less than what I played last time. So let's check it out at a more medium tempo. So the tempo itself just smooths things out a little bit. And what we're going to do is now we're going to go into a much faster tempo and you're going to notice it even less. And this is because if I tried to, do much of really anything at a really fast tempo, it's not going to work because the notes are just flying by too fast. So as the tempo goes up, the differences between the notes get less and less. But the key to this is you need to work on it slow for long enough that this becomes like second nature to you, to give a slight little push on the offbeat. And this could be hard for a lot of you. If you've never done it before, it's going to feel really awkward to give that push on the offbeat. But I promise you, this is going to go a long way to give you that classic swinging sound that we hear people like Charlie Parker really revolutionize in his music. So let's play this excerpt at a faster tempo and hear how it sort of naturally smooths itself out by way of necessity, really. And after listening back to that, after what I just recorded, it's not that it goes away, it's that there's a little bit less. There's a little bit less of opportunity for me to do that. So what I'm doing is I'm picking and choosing where I'm really going to accent those offbeats a little bit more carefully. Because I have to, right? Now, you will also notice that I am tonguing just about every note still. And I can do that up to a certain tempo, but I'm keeping that tongue so light. It's barely, barely, barely touching the reed. And whatever you need to do to sort of bring that to your instrument, if it's not saxophone, whatever you can do to keep that articulation very light, that's going to be the key to tonguing and articulating at fast tempos like this. And so many musicians do this in such a different way. Like Johnny Griffin is somebody that comes to mind, who it doesn't matter if he was playing at like 350 BPM, he'd be tonguing everything. It's absolutely amazing. So just like everything else in jazz, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and you need to develop your own conception. Are you going to tongue everything? Are you going to slur everything? Kind of up to you when you're developing your style over the years of practicing. So what I want you to do is I want you to take that line in the PDF And I would like you to start at a really slow tempo with a heavy accent on the offbeats and gradually work your way up the metronome and try to back off on those accents to the point where you're not even really thinking about it, but you're still slightly emphasizing those offbeats. And I think you'll start to feel that your lines become a lot more compelling and they push through the measures and they just swing more. You'll start to get that more characteristic swing sound. So hopefully this has been helpful. Make sure you drop me any questions that you might have in the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. I monitor that group really, really closely and make sure I'm getting back to everybody. All right, people, have a great weekend. Thank you again for tuning in. Remember, if you want the PDF, 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners. Get yourself signed up today. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Stay safe out there. Bye.